Hi, I'm Teresa with You Are the Artist, and today I am going to teach you how to create this beautiful Northern Lights tumbler with all water-based CrystaLac products, and also how to apply a UV DTF full wrap around the whole cup there. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, let's get started. I've already prepped my tumbler and done the water test. The water is sheeting off, it's not repelling. And I'm going to be using the CrystaLac Universal Black, which is a tannin blocker, a primer, base coat, and paint all in one. So this will adhere to the metal, and then I can do whatever I want on top of this. So I am using what we're calling the makeup brush from CrystaLac. I really love this brush. It does feel like a makeup brush, but I am just not pushing on that brush, as you can see, just letting it glide across. That way you get more paint on it. When you push on that brush, it's actually going to wipe paint away. So getting it all coated, and I will let that spin till it dries, and then I will just let it sit for 4 hours for it to completely be dried, is what you're supposed to do with the Flippin' Awesomes and the Universals from CrystaLac. And then we will get started on our design. So after 4 hours, I actually went back and recoated that cup again with the Universal Black, let that dry another 4 hours. And now I'm going to apply the glitter glue adhesive from CrystaLac. And I'm doing this because sometimes when you use such a highly pigmented base like this with the Universals, especially the black, you might get a little bit of repelling when you put on the grand finale. So in order to avoid that, I'm just putting a very thin coat of glitter glue adhesive. Like I said, it's from CrystaLac, and I will let that dry for 2 hours, and then I'll be back. Okay, we are going to first of all splatter with a toothbrush to make it look like we've got a bunch of little tiny stars. My Universal White, clean toothbrush, dipping it in water, just going to tap it off there. We don't want too much water on it. I'm going to run that whole bottom surface of that toothbrush around and in the Universal White, and then you'll see me just, do like that to make sure that I don't have too much. And as you see, I did. It splattered without me even like taking my finger across it. So then I tap a little bit on the paper towel to make sure it's not too wet, because if it's too wet, it will actually drip onto your cup. So if you hold your toothbrush farther away, you're going to get tinier splatters, and that's what I want. So you can't even see my toothbrush. I've got it so far away from it. If you were doing this to get snow or anything else on any other design and you want them bigger, you would just hold your toothbrush a little bit closer. So yeah, you see it's how it's rubbing off on my finger. And what you want to do, sometimes when your toothbrush is too wet, it will drip from there. So make sure it's not. Okay, since that was just a little splatter, I didn't need to wait the 4 hours for it to dry. I just took a hair dryer on cool and kind of kept it a little bit of distance away as it turned around to make sure it was dry, because they're so tiny. We're going to mix up the pigments now, and you saw that, that beautiful Galactic Blue Mystic Mica. It's a shimmer coat, and we're going to use that instead of one of the pigments for the blue. And I did squirt out some yellow pigment, and if you saw, I just put a little drip of that blue in there, and I'm just going to mix that all up. That's going to be our green glow for the Northern Lights. So you can use a popsicle stick for this, or this is just like a little palette knife I have that I like to use. Get that all mixed up and then wipe it off on your paper towel. Now I'm going to make teal. You do have some teal ink, CrystaLac ink in your kit. If you want to use that instead, you can. It's obviously, it's not as thick, but then this Galactic Blue isn't either. I'm going to use that on its own. But I wanted to make teal with the blue and the yellow. So that's what I'm doing here. So I got my little pile of Galactic Blue, and I just put like a pinhead size amount of yellow in there. And I'm just going to do a little bit at a time, because if I had put that whole drop of yellow in there, it would just turn green immediately. So just mix it till you get to the color you like. And then the third color we're using is just the galactic blue by itself. And for now, that's all we need. So I decided to put a little bit of universal white in with that, and I mean a tiny, tiny, tiny bit. Almost, again, like a pinhead on the end of that palette knife. Just very, very little. And mix that up, and I like the way that looks. So if you guys, like I said, decide on what color you would like, I'm going to put a little bit more yellow in there, just kind of play around with it, but then we'll get started here when I get them all mixed up. I also have a little bit of blue I put out there by itself, the galactic blue, and like a little strip of universal white. Our next step is to coat the cup with some Grand Finale. And I decided I'm going to put it in a little container and a few drops of water because I don't want it to dry as quickly as it normally does. I mean, we like the fact that it dries quickly for a top coat, but when you're going to be messing around and kind of playing in it, we don't want it to dry as quickly. So putting some in this little cup, and I don't know if you can tell how much I put. It's probably like a third of that little bitty cup because I don't want it dripping wet like I would have it if it's if I'm sealing the cup. I'm not going to put near that amount on there. So it's probably about 1/3 of that little bitty condiment container cup. And I'm going to little pipette, and I think I put in about 10 drops of water here. Let's see. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or 10. Then we're going to stir that up, and that's just going to give us a little more dry time. Not a whole bunch, but enough to where we can play around in that for a little bit. If you have bright tone, you could use that instead if you like, instead of the Grand Finale. So what I like to do is sometimes just sketch, if you can call it that, out a little strategy as to where I'm going to put my Northern Lights. That way, since we are going to be in a little bit of a hurry, you're not going to have to like guess as you're doing it. So I like to have, like I said, just little diagrams, something I just kind of drew up real quick. This is what I'm doing. I don't know that I actually kept to that exact, but if you want to copy that or take a screenshot of it and use that as your own, that's fine. If not, you just do your own thing. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and coat my cup with the Grand Finale that has a little bit of water in it to keep it wet a little bit longer. Okay, and here we go. I am using just like a little nylon brush there. You can use a popsicle stick. I like using brushes, so I just dipped it into a lot of that lime green color and just tapping the line of my Northern Light. Giving it a decent amount. I don't want so much to where it's going to be dripping. So I'm only going to do a couple before I move on. So I'm not going to tap my lines around that entire cup. I'm going to do just like a couple Northern Lights at a time. All right, so I'm going to do a little bit of the teal now. And you see how dark that looks. We're going to take care of that. That's what that little strip of white is for. So I'm going to tap a little area of teal. And then I'm going to take that makeup brush. It's dry. Just very, very lightly, a very light touch. You're just skimming across the tops of those colors. You're going to see it more so with that green. That teal is a little dark, but I'm just going to do one strip. I'm wiping it off on a dry piece of paper towel. I'm really liking that green. Try not to come back over what you just did, unless you need to. I mean, you know, I'm the last person in the world to be telling this to, because I sometimes don't know when to quit. But I'm like restraining myself from not going over it, because the more you go over it, it doesn't always look the best, okay? So, and we're gonna come back to that teal because it's not as light as I want. And this blue is even darker. I know it's hard for you to see, but I'm getting a whole line of where I want it. Again, gonna come back very, very lightly. You're just touching the very chisel edge of those bristles. And you can't see that hardly at all. And you're gonna see here what I'm gonna do about that. So I'm taking the very edge of that brush and see I'm not getting hardly any white at all on that. And then I dipped it in the blue so it's not just pure white. And it does appear that it gets pure white, so I'm gonna re-dip it again and get more blue. And just use that area on the brush that I've got paint on and bring it up again. Grabbing just more blue. So I went ahead and cleaned my brush out in the water and wiped it off on the paper towel. Make sure you always dry it off on that paper towel so you're not dripping your paint onto your cup. And I'm just going to go back in the green and add a few more strips of that and see what that looks like. I kind of like that color, so that's why I'm adding more of that. Rinsing my brush out, drying it off on my paper towel, and I'm going back in for more teal. This time you see me dipping in the white. I just went over there and dipped in a little bit of white. I'm tapping it on the bottom of that teal. I'm not tapping it on the black part of the cup. So make sure you're tapping into that teal. And then again, take your makeup brush, make sure it's wiped off. And I'm just going to go through both those colors. So now I'm just kind of ad-libbing. I'm not even looking at my design. I really don't care for how long I made those blue ones, so I'm going to put a little bit of green in there to mix in with it and see what happens. Liking that. I'm going to grab a little bit of white. I'm going to go to the bottom of that teal, what we did in the beginning where I said it was a little dark. I just put the white right at the bottom of that teal. And now I'm grabbing it on the tip of my, the bigger brush. Ran that across there. Got a little bit too much, but I'm just going to leave it. Now I'm just kind of playing with the colors I already have on there. So I'm grabbing a little bit of green and a little bit of white. So it's going to be lighter than that green I already have on there. Just want a different hue of that green. Gonna tap that. And I'm just going to use that little brush right there that I'm tapping it with to actually kind of pull up on it also. No, I'm not. I'm going to use the makeup brush. I lied. Here we go. That's when I used it. I knew I used it. So see how it's just making the previous green just a little bit brighter, kind of putting a little bit of a highlight in some of that. Now I'm going to do the same with the turquoise. So just kind of use your own judgment again. Kind of pay attention to the feel of your grand finale. If you're starting to make marks through the grand finale when you're trying to go in and add more, you know, if it's drying up, then definitely stop. I think I had a couple minutes left that I could play around a little bit more, and then here in a second I'm I'm going to do some purple. So actually my time kind of gave out on playing in that grand finale more. So what I did, I just let it dry. It has dried for a couple hours. As you see, I just ran my finger along it to make sure you saw that it was dry. And you can always go back now. So I'm grabbing a little bit of the galaxy blue, or the galactic blue, I'm sorry, and a tiny, tiny bit of white, and then tapping that off on that paper plate to make sure it's not too white. As I said before, I didn't really like this blue area here. I'm getting really picky now. This is just me. So I'm going to run just like another strand of the ray of the Northern Lights through it. So just coming through the middle there and just pulling up. I don't have any grand finale or, any kind of top coat on this right now. It is completely dry. So I'm not getting the amount of blending, I guess you want to say, as I would with the grand finale, but that's okay. I like this look. So playing in that a little bit, and then I'm going to play in a little bit of magenta and violet. Now I'm going to grab some of the teal and go back over those teal areas a little bit. Again, this is just me, being a perfectionist. If, I think it looked okay before, but I just can't bring myself to stop, so I'm just going to continue. You guys use your own judgment, grabbing a little bit more teal, a little bit white in that area. But this just shows that you can come back and make things a little bit different if you're not happy with it. You don't have to strip it. You don't have to paint over it all black again. You can just come back and add some touch-ups. Going back into that blue because I'm just not giving up. So I decided to go ahead and add some violet. And what I did was put a little bit of violet on my brush and a little tip of white, just like we did earlier with the blue. And went ahead and made that purple. And I'm sorry, I forgot to turn my phone on to catch it on video. Didn't do that, and I did it and it dried. Now I'm taking some magenta. So that is completely dry. Now I'm taking magenta, just magenta, and going over that, and it's actually making it so much more bold looking. Yeah, that's magenta over the violet and white. I really like that. So here I'm going to show you another one because I like purple. So once I found the color I liked, I decided to add 2 of them. So here is it from the beginning where I missed videoing it a minute ago. So it's just the straight purple, or excuse me, violet ink. Trying to decide on a place where I want it to go. So no white or anything, just straight into, oh no, I am putting white on it. I lied again. So violet and a very, very, very small amount of white. And just turning that brush at an angle. You just kind of push as you put it on the cup and pull up. So I'm going to do that a couple times till I like it. Sometimes less is more. Trying to do a smaller one here, not get carried away. And I'm going to go ahead and dry what I just put on there, the purple and the magenta. Again, I'm just using a hair dryer on cool. There is no wet grand finale on here. I'm just trying to get the inks dry so I can go over it with magenta. So now I'm going into just the magenta ink. No white on that yet. And you see how that just like brings out the purple. It's so pretty. I am going back into the magenta and a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of the universal white. See, you can barely see it on there. That was quick, but yeah, hardly any. Just going back over that one spot to like bring a little bit of highlight into that. So I have forced myself to stop now before I way overdo it. So I walked away, let that dry, actually let it sit for about 3 or 4 hours because I had other stuff to do. But yeah, make sure it's dry. And now what I'm going to do is mix some of the grand finale into another little condiment cup. And I also put in a little bit of the Galaxy Mica because it gives it such a beautiful shimmer. So mix that in a little condiment cup, and then I'm going to apply that to the cup. And you can see right there as I'm putting it on, it is just, it's beautiful. I probably could have used more grand finale. I might have put a little too much of the Galaxy Mica in there, but I like it. But yeah, so just get in there, get it covered. I could have put more on there, but that's all I had mixed up, so it will just have to do. But get in there, spread it out, get out within 30 to 45 seconds, and let that baby spin and look beautiful. I let this cup dry at least 12 to 14 hours because I don't want to take the chance of peeling up that grand finale. You can wait even longer, but I would at least wait that long. So this is the UV DTF that's included in your CrystaLac October box. Like I said, it's completely dry. And what I'm doing now, I'm trying to decide where I want my trees. So I'm looking at my Northern Lights and see if there's any area that I want to cover up with the trees or any areas that I don't want covered up. So I found that one spot where you see right there where that tallest tree is, because there was a gap, yeah, right there, a gap under that blue, which would have been fine if I still had a tree shorter than that, but I wanted the tallest tree there. So what I'm doing now is pulling it back a little bit. The film, it has a transfer film on top, and I'm going to cut just a little edge off so I've got enough of that sticky transfer tape to be able to stick on the cup without pulling the whole thing off. So I've got it sitting in just like a silicone rubber holder, cup holder. And I'm going to make sure I get that tallest tree right where I want it at on my cup. I'm going to line it up so the bottom of that DTF doesn't like hang over the cup. So I don't want it hanging over. I don't want it being flopped up on the end. The paint underneath the edge of that is black, so it will match. You won't have to worry about that. So I've got it lined up, trying to show you here. I'm going to stick the edge that I had peeled that white backing paper from right there. Just going to press down. Then you'll see me turn it here to show you. Going to press that down. And then I'm going to turn my little holder to make it easier for me to actually apply it. So I'm going to lay it down. I'm going to flip it over, you're going to see that white backing. Okay, so I'm going to pull up on that and take my little squeegee or smoother and just every inch or so, or just kind of smooth it. Smooth it as you're going. You're going to turn it, smooth it as you're pulling that backing off, just little bits at a time, making sure it's smooth as you go. So just take your time with this. Don't be in a hurry, because once this is stuck, it's not coming off. You don't want to, this is not repositionable. This is not just regular vinyl. This is much more stronger, okay, or much more sticky. So UV DTF is a permanent decal or permanent wrap. So now I'm flipping it over so I can see where I started. So I'm not going to pull the whole thing off yet. You see, I'm going to pull till I've got like an inch or so left. I'm going to cut that backing just to get it out of my way so I can see it better. Because now I have to go in and smooth that whole area that I just laid down. You don't want any bubbles. You want it nice and smooth. And another thing with these trees, there's so many little bitty tiny edges. So I'm just going to go through and make sure I have all those edges down. You know, that it's really stuck before I go pulling up that transfer film. So now that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come down and grab, it looks like clear tape. It's really stuck to that cup. Trying to get in a position where you can see it so my hand isn't in the way. So you see, you're just going to take it, and you're going to lay that film kind of down away from me. You're not pulling straight up, you're pulling down or across. You'll see here in a minute when I get enough tape being pulled out. And go really slow again, because you've got all those little tiny edges around those trees, and you see it's pretty sticky. So again, make sure that your grand finale has set at least 12 hours before you try doing this. I mean, maybe even 24. That's got to be really dry. And I only have one layer of grand finale on here. So see how I'm pulling? I'm not pulling up, I'm kind of laying it over and pulling it. Now, if you come across, which I did not, I was lucky, come across where it didn't stick, like you've got a little black that's kind of peeling up and it's not sticking, just go backwards, go back with that tape and rub it over again and make sure that that's pressed down before you peel up again. And I just cut that to get it out of my way, because now I'm going to pull the rest of that backing off and just feed it around. Got my little smoother tool. Again, rubbing the little edges there to make sure it's stuck really well. Then I will continue to pull off the transfer film. And then once that is off, you may have to kind of wiggle it back and forth to get it to come off easily also. There we go, got it all off. So now you're still going to come back with your little smoothing tool and make sure all those little edges around those trees are completely pressed down, because there's a lot of them. So just take your time. You know, go alongside each side, making sure none of them are sticking up, because you don't want them sticking up when you go applying your grand finale. Another thing while I'm doing this, I want to tell you, like I said, this is permanent, this DTF, and it's waterproof. You know, you would hand wash your cup just like you would normally, then dry it off. So you actually don't have to continue to seal this, but since I only have one layer of Grand Finale on here and I want more build up more protection on my cup on the painted areas, I am going to go ahead and add some more Grand Finale layers. Looks good. Okay, so I went ahead and cleaned it off since I had my hands all over that cup with the surface conditioner. Put it on there and wiped it dry. Didn't film that part. I'm going to go ahead and add my Grand Finale. If you feel like you're not sure if this will repel on you, you are welcome to go ahead and put a layer of glitter glue over the entire cup and let that dry a couple hours, then come back. But I actually tested it on a little piece of DTF that I had, and it did not repel, so I'm going for it. And I'm glad I did because it worked out fine. Yeah, it didn't repel one bit. Looks great. I'm going to let this layer dry, and I'm probably going to add 2 more. So I'm going to have at least a total of 4 layers of Grand Finale over that whole painted area.